No, Columbia.
Columbia. Okay, it's good to see you. He's with the
Say we. Just say we.
They're like them boys, the grandma sent them to the grocery store to get her groceries, and the guy now seen some boy that had beef with, and went in there with a gun. One of them did, and he pulled out the gun, had with the 7-year-old brother and his 14-year-old brother with him. So it looked like they was accomplished, to it. And then another one then shot the boy. And he didn't die, but they had to fly him to Greenville. Children do too much. Do too much. I said, what happened to the day when you fist fight?
Right.
Now everything got to be a gun.
And it don't just affect them, it affects everybody.
That's what I'm talking about. He lived with his grandma. His grandma had to, she said she trying to raise him, and she sent him to the store, and she didn't even know the older grandson had the gun. She's like, where you get the gun from? They're children out here on the street, and grandparents trying to, they can't keep up with him. Can't keep up with him. And that sex trafficking stuff getting out of hand too. With the younger. Is it on? You know how to set up a camera. Video. You know.
That one. What a cord. You got a cord to go to it. That's not wireless. Where's the cord to go to it? You got to be a cord and plug it into your laptop. That's all it needs.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. How are you? All right. It's a little chilly in here.
Very. What color down?
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Where y'all getting at?
I'm gonna do some work, but I'm gonna be listening.
I know how that is. I know. I took some home myself.
Right, how are you?
Huh?
Never can.
Cotton it.
Oh, what's up?
Still ain't hearing you through the speakers though.
Sure ain't.
We can hold you to that. You know, Brian said we're going to sandwiches, so you know, I'm Good morning. We are going to call to order our monthly meeting of the North Carolina Civic Group on this day, March the 8th, in the year 2025. And we're going to ask Mr. Smith if he would lead us in our prayer this morning.
May we bow our heads for a word of prayer. This morning, our Heavenly Father, once again we come before thee to say thank you. Lord, we want to thank you for our this morning's rising. Lord, we pray that you have given us the strength to go throughout a day that we haven't seen before. But Lord, we pray that you will be in our midst. And as we discuss the business and affairs of the Eastern North Carolina Civic Group, we pray that you touch our minds, our bodies, and our souls. Lord, give us understanding that we need to go forth in your name. These blessings and all other blessings we ask in the name of the Father, the Son, and the blessed Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith.
Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome you to Eastern North Carolina Senate Group meeting for the month of March 2025. We hope that you will be with us in the future. Hope that you would be very active as we are in trying to get our communities as healthy as they possibly can be. Tune in, give us the feedback on what you gather from what we have to present to you today, and again, we welcome you. Wholeheartedly, we welcome you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthews, for welcoming us to beautiful Martin County. So the objective of the Eastern North Carolina Civic Group is to provide an organizational structure system for Black Americans, minorities, and poor people, and to encourage, promote, and involve members in all facets of government. As I look around and look online, counties present: Burt T., Dare, Edgecombe, Martin, Northampton, Terrell, and Washington. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. According to our bylaws, we need one more county to have quorum. So if anyone joins, we would go back and do roll call again. You have an agenda before you, and I guess since we don't have quorum, we can't even we'll just go by the agenda since we don't have the necessary quorum to do business. And I'll now skip to the chairman remarks. I have shared this letter that I wrote to our editor of our local newspaper, but just to give you a sense of why I wrote it, we have our local newspaper is very conservative, and they have a black conservative opinion writer, and he's our reporter, and every week he's putting something in the paper negatively about us as a people, against the policies that promote us as African Americans. And so I felt like Elijah, and I was like, man, nobody in Washington County is responding to this guy. So I wrote a letter to the editor, and I'll quickly read this, and then let you know that I was exactly like Elijah. Normalcy. The opinion writer for the Roanoke Beacon claimed that the 34-count convicted criminal Donald Trump was restoring normalcy, which seemed like a joke to me. I call it chaos. He has released violent criminals who attacked the Capitol on January the 6th and frozen federal spending for essential programs like Medicaid, SNAP benefits, small business support, farmer assistance, Pell Grants, Head Start, and rental assistance. Furthermore, he has proposed eliminating the Department of Education, renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and failed to keep his promise to lower food and gas prices on his first day in office or end the Russian-Ukraine war.
Put it on mute.
Can you put it on mute?
Miss Bird, we can hear you.
Okay, she's on mute. Okay. This is not normal. It is an injustice. People are suffering and dying due to the freeze on USAID funds. Instead of leading the nation in mourning and showing compassion for the families of those who died in the tragic plane and helicopter crash in Washington, D.C., Trump, with no evidence, blamed the incident on diversity, equity, and inclusion. This blame was attributed to not all individuals involved being white men. A white woman was piloting the helicopter. The sheer absurdity of this accusation is difficult to comprehend and should leave us all in disbelief. Diversity, equity, and inclusion seek to ensure fair treatment and complete participation for everyone, especially those who have historically been underrepresented or discriminated against because of their background, identity, or disability. No standards are lowered to meet the position criteria. Who benefits the most from DEI? White women benefit the most. White women have seen substantial gains in representation and leadership roles, while Black people, particularly Black women, continues to face significant barriers. But demographically, who is the most educated? By both race and gender, the data shows that Black women are enrolled in college at a higher percentage than any other group. According to the National Center for Education Statistics, between 2018 and 19, Black women comprise 68% of associate degrees, 66% of bachelor degrees, 71% of master degrees, and 65% of doctoral, medical, and dental degrees. Black women would run our country if the hiring were based on merit. Also, according to the landmark study by the National Bureau of Economic Research, all else being equal, resumes with white-sounding names like Emily and Greg got nearly 50% more callbacks than those with Black-sounding names like Lakeisha and Jamal. Donald Trump State Department appointee Darren Beattie posted on X that competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work. When looking at the elected boards in Washington County, the only board that would receive the blessing of the Trump administration would be the Washington County Board of Commissioners, which has a white man as chairman and a white man as vice chair. Now, a side note, our other 3 members on our board of commissioners are black. All other boards have a woman or a black person serving in leadership. The Roanoke Beacon's opinion writer reminds me of a Dave Chappelle character, Clayton Bigsby. Now, I want you all to Google that later on, Clayton Bigsby. If the Roanoke Beacon writer calls this normalcy, he needs to look in the mirror and realize that statistically, he could be considered a DEI hire working for a DEI newspaper, with a white woman being the owner. The irrationality of his views is evident, and it's time for a reality check. So as I said, I was feeling like I was Elijah, that I'm the only one in Washington County that's going to speak up. But after this letter was put in the paper, the past several weeks, people have been writing. So just like God told Elijah that you aren't the only one, I've got 7,000 others that in our county, there are more people than me. And I'm saying all of this to say this, is that we too, all of us need to push the issue in our counties. When something's put in our newspapers that's negative toward us, we need to push back. We need to push back. And if we push back, you will find out that you will have support in your community. So that's the chairman's report.
Do you know the people that responded?
I didn't.
You didn't?
I did not know the people who responded, but they were. I've been told some of them were white, and many of them were black. Yes. Ms. Bird is on, so Ms. Bird gives us quorum. So I will go back. That's Gates County. So I will go back. You've had a chance to look at the agenda. I will accept the motion to approve the agenda. Is it anything that, I do want to add the conversation with, and I'll make that the conversation with our Congressman Davis on the SAVE Act. Okay. It's been moved by Mr. Matthews and second by Mr. Ronald Smith that we approve the agenda with that addition. All right. So now we will get to that. We will get to, thank you. Thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion, aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you all so much. And I want to extend a special thank you to Turl County that is here with us this morning. I sent out an email and Mr. Woodard, you responded. So I need to give a prize to the people who respond to the emails. But we do thank you for that.
Do he want to tell us a little bit about his group?
Mr. Woodard, do you want to tell us something about your organization, the Concerned Citizens in Turl County? And if so, come on up so they can hear you on our online people.
Did I put you on the spot, Mr. Wood? I apologize. I apologize for putting you on the spot.
If you would come up here so they could hear you on the mic. We've got people online.
Can we take it to him?
But they won't be able to sing it.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
First of all honor, and glory, and praise go to the Lord for giving us another day. Thank you, Mr. Stokes, for giving me this invitation. I come from Terrell County, Columbia, North Carolina, as a concerned citizen member. When I saw the invitation, I responded because I needed to know what Washington County is doing because of our critical issues that we have going on now. And Mr. Stokes just read a letter there to just kind of put things in perspective to my thinking about all that's going on. I don't know the gentleman, the conservative gentleman that usually respond in your newspaper, but I have read that a few times, and I said, my goodness, what's that all about? But anyway, it is very perplexing to me as to why we as Democrats have to always save democracy. And it just goes right back to what you just said about the most educated ones are the black women, the ones who are benefiting the most from DEI, or the white women and the white men. And as small as Terrell County is, it is amazing to me how we are being affected by this big issue. We got a guy that's supposed to be president that has no interest in anything that's going on in Terrell County, but yet you have all those supporters. So this is a very critical issue to me personally. I'm just kind of here today to observe what you're doing here in Washington County to hopefully have some kind of input in what we're doing in Columbia, North Carolina as concerned citizens. So my ears are open, and thank you for the invitation. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. And this is more than Washington County. This is an organization with 23 counties. So we appreciate that. And when we speak the same in all of our counties, because all of us have the same issues in our counties, but when we speak the same and that our elected officials hear the same thing from us, that is power, and it is unity as well. Ms. Hill was on, and I see that she's off. If Ms. Hill gets on, we're going to come back to the treasurer's report. But I had seen that she was on. But now we want to have a conversation about our conversation that we had with Congressman Davis about the SAVE Act. If you remember, last month we approved having a conversation. We voted on having a conversation with him on the SAVE Act. And we had the opportunity, thanks to Mr. Dancy, for getting us the information that we could be on a Zoom with Congressman Davis, that we had a great conversation with him. And I'm going to ask for a volunteer that would like to come up and start our discussion of what our conversation with Congressman Davis was like. Mr. or Mrs. Smith and Betty can fill in. If you come up here, I do need you to come up here, Mr. Smith. And Ms. Smith, I know, and Ms. Smith is our star of the week. So Ms. Smith, you two come on up here and start our discussion. And Dancy, I'm sure you've got something to say too.
everyone. I'm Ron Smith from Northampton County. I was on the Zoom meeting with Congressman Davis, and there was a bit of a, well, it was a good, I think it was a good meeting. Uh, we had some questions for the congressman concerning the way he, well, not so much the way that he voted, but we was trying to find out his mindset as to how he go about deciding to vote or where he stand on the issue. And there was quite a few questions concerning the SAFE Act. And well, I think what we was after was to get him to change his vote on what he had done on a couple of previous occasions. But to bottom line was he didn't say exactly what he was going to do. Let me put this in because I've been around politics and politicians for a long time, and ever since 1972, I've been involved with local politics right on up to the congressional level. Uh, Politicians they tend to you back them in a corner, then they gonna say what they need to say to get out of that corner. But what we have to do is be more vocal and hold people more accountable uh, when we elect people for positions. And it's this year here with the new president is becoming very much more critical as to how vocal we are and how we stand on certain issues. We need to get our representatives to be more uh, vocal, more communicating with on the local, especially on the local level. Uh, Congressman Davis, he's ex-military or former military, and way I see his actions is that he do more for the military service. Not that he does more, but his interest is in the military agendas and also within farming, which affects northeastern North Carolina greatly because we're in the agricultural belt, and some of the decisions he makes affects how what kind of crops we're gonna grow and how much money we're gonna make off them point blank. But I think what we need to do is just don't just put people in office and let them go the way they want to go all the time. We need to let them know how we feel about issues, and we think, and we let them know that we are doing things uh, for the betterment of the community. So therefore, we want them to do the same thing for our communities, uh, wherever we're located. Uh, I mean, I know Congressman Davis personally, and I think he have Eastern North Carolina in his heart. But when you get into politics, it's sometimes you kind of get in the position where you got to choose between the lesser of two evils, and you're in a position that you make decisions that you don't want to make, and you feel as though you're doing it for the good of the communities, your constituents, and but we all are not going to see eye to eye. But I think once we finish up with the Zoom meeting last week, uh, Congressman Davis had a better feel for how northeastern North Carolina felt about things that was going on up in Washington and some of his decisions that he had made in the past. So I think he gonna open his ears up more. His eyes are open, but we want to open his ears up more and speak to or like we say at church, truth to power. Thank you. That's about all I can bring out of it right now.
Thank you. That was very good. That was very good, Mr. Smith, and well said. Well said. Anyone else that would like to have comments? The only thing I would add to what Mr. Smith said is a comment that we continuously hear from the staff is that this is not GK's district anymore. Meaning that the way they've gerrymandered it, that we shouldn't expect his vote to be the same as GK's. And I understand that if you want to be a lifetime politician, but to me, can I sleep good knowing that I voted to stay in office, but I didn't vote what was best for my people? And that's the issue. And I've said the next time I hear that, I'm going to ask, well, would your vote be different if it were just like GK's? And if the answer is yes, that's not the answer I want to hear. I mean, that's just Wesley's opinion, and you all forgive me if I'm wrong, but all right. Are there any questions from anyone online? Okay, Mr. Woodard, we have a question here.
And what they done was, what the hell? It was
Ricky, can you hear?
did their lines pull together?
Yeah, a Reverend Blow.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay.
Said about the way and so we
Yeah, can you explain the say that everyone's on the same page?
Okay.
That's what Kate, that's what Jovita's gonna do.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
issue, but they were just letting him know that we didn't agree with his tactic, the way he was doing things. He should have been personally look at all of it, but no reason. See, you keep in mind that he's there for all the people, not just when you get that same way. Do what they tell you. We got some, what was it we discussed down here last week? What issue in particular was that with the same fact that,
What was our biggest concern
yeah,
with the SAVE Act?
with Dave, with Dr. Davis, he had voted in the past for, but we was trying to get him to vote,
No.
change, vote no.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we was trying to get him to vote no. And, well, it just took a little discussion of kind of condensing, but still know about how did the third vote, did they ever take the third vote yet?
I'm not sure, but we've got Dr. Lee on that's going to talk to us about it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And Dr. Lee is next, if there are no more questions about it.
Clear on what that meeting was about. That meeting was only about the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act is about, what is it? The Board of Elections, well, not the Board of Elections, but individuals would not be able to register people to vote. You would have to go to the Board of Election office. You would have to have a birth certificate and or a passport. So that's what that meeting was actually about. But I want to speak to what the president said about not being former Congressman G.K. Butterfield district. Now I can take you back to when Congressman G.K. Butterfield was appointed. We was in Greene County. Don Davis was the mayor at the time. We had to go down. I had a vote. We had to go down there and vote that night. And Congressman G.K. Butterfield got on the plane the next day to go to Washington. It may not be the same district, but it's the same counties. So that didn't change. It may went further out where this Pitt County has been cut out now, but that has nothing to do with it. The people and the issues are still the same. I tried to talk. Don Davis wanted the appointment, and I tried to make him understand that GK had been a lawyer. He was well known across the district, and you were committing political suicide, waiting your time. He finally backed out the last day that we had to go to Greene County and meet. I'm from Edgecombe County. But like I said, I had a vote at the table. And I try to tell these guys, don't commit political suicide, wait till your time. And his time is now. But, you know, I don't understand. He was my first congressional district chair for a long time. I have challenged him over the years. I won't go into something happened in Edgecombe County, and I had to challenge him on that. And I don't think he kind of like it today. But when we have meetings in Edgecombe County, we had some crazy chairs. So what I did, got him to come in as the first congressional district chair and run our meetings so we could have a fair election during, say for instance, we voted on appointing the sheriff and different ones. I don't understand where the brother's coming from. He'll be in Rocky Mount tonight at 5 o'clock this evening doing an address at a banquet I'm going to. I will be screaming live there too, so you can watch and see what he have to say. Maybe he'll touch on some issues that you might be, got some concern about. But we got to hold these folk accountable, and we cannot wait until they come to us. We gotta call them in. If they don't come in, then we know where they stand. But we gotta do a better job. And I think the Eastern Civic Group, out of all the groups, I thought they put on my Civic Group shirt. Got almost here, so I had on my NAACP shirt. But we gotta hold these folk accountable. My number one group today is the Civic Group. We are doing more than other groups, pastors and all. We got to hold these people accountable. They have got to get involved. We can't do it by ourselves. Elected officials, we had the Democratic Party chair came to Edgecombe County to our meeting on Thursday night, and one of the ladies stood up and asked, how can we hold our elected officials accountable? The first question is, people always ask you, do you go to meetings? Hell, I've been going to meetings since 1996, recording them like I'm doing today, holding them accountable. But it's not my duty to have to educate people. You're an elected official, you're getting paid, and the churches need to get involved and make the people aware. I work a real job. Been on my job 38 years, taking care of my daddy, 91 years old, trying to work. I'm in Williamston today. I live in Edgecombe County. I'm doing my part, but don't ask me, am I attending me? What are you doing as the Democratic Party? We got to hold these folk accountable. Time out for a whole lot of shucking and jiving, even on the state level. Because I'm not pleased with how the election went the other Saturday. We was in Wilson with the state convention. So I just want to say that follow your congressmen and other representatives and hold them accountable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Dancy, for that. Yeah, we just adding to that. We have to hold our elected officials accountable for their actions. We do. And next, I'm going to ask Betty if she would introduce our next presenters.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I am
quite honored to introduce our two speakers today. I am introducing you to Dr. Jovita Lee and Kay Brown with Advanced Carolina and North Carolina Black Alliance, an organization that I found my passion in years ago. Okay, Dr. Lee. Jovita Lee, Program Director for North Carolina Black Alliance, Policy Director, Advanced Carolina. Dr. Lee is a North Carolina native and graduate of Meredith College with a BA International Studies and a PGD and Doctor in Business Administration. She has
Miss Maddie, you don't have to read my bio. It's okay.
No,
You don't have to read my
yeah, but honey, I like to brag on
Okay.
intelligent black women. I'm gonna read this bio. She also completed her MPA from North Carolina Central University, and her doctorates in organizational leadership from Gardner-Webb University. Let me get some help here. My glasses. Her advocacy, policy, and justice work specifically for environmental communities of interest in Black and Brown community is led on both a state and national scale. Her efforts intentionally highlighted the intersection of justice work in all realms. During Hurricane Florence, she co-facilitated several community-based disaster relief efforts, including several water and land rescue and home restoration. As a result of her collective work and activism, she is a 2024 recipient of the Steve Wing International Environmental Justice Award. She is Program Director for North Carolina Black Alliance, making history as the youngest incoming director in the history of the organization. She serves as Policy Director for the sister 501c4 Advanced Carolina. She is the convener of the North Carolina Black Alliance Black and Brown Policy Network, a network of over 30 Black and Brown-led organizations across the state of North Carolina. She also serves on the board for North Carolina Budgeting and Tax Center, 501c3, North Carolina for the People, 501c3, and Spiritual Learners, a 501c3. She is also the co-founder of Meredith College Black Alumni Collective. She recently served as the Senior Environmental Justice Organizer for the Center of Biological Diversity and the Center Action Fund, the Policy and Partner Support Specialist for Advanced Carolina. And I present to you Dr. Jovita Lee. She's got a little more on this page here, but I'll email y'all her bio.
Please don't. I promise you it's not necessary.
Okay.
But I appreciate everybody on Zoom space and also in person, and thank you for Miss Betty inviting me into the space today. Like Kay, we both have a 4 o'clock engagement. Can y'all hear me? Or no?
We can hear you. I'm just so sorry.
Yes.
I'm just so sorry that the people in here can't see you. That's what I apologize.
Oh, because of the camera setup?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, and I got a 4 o'clock, so we wouldn't have made it back in person.
But go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to share my slides. I have shared screen access, I believe, so I think I should be good to go. And Kay is going to tag team this with me because the important thing.
Dr. Lee, if you will allow me to read Kay's bio too, I didn't know if you were going to do it separate.
Please.
I didn't know if you were doing it separate or together.
Miss Betty, I didn't know if I was getting a separate bio.
I was trying to get her to stop multiple times, but she refused.
Yeah, I didn't know. Anyway, Kay Brown is my boss, and I'm proud to work under Kay in her leadership and her mentorship. Kay Brown is a seasoned organizer and operations strategist with a strong background in political education, voter engagement, and community organizing. As the organizing director at Advanced Carolina, she leads a statewide initiative to mobilize communities, protect voting rights, and develop long-term civic engagement strategies. With over a decade of experience in operations leadership, Kay has successfully expanded organization, built sustainable community programs, and triple output in key initiatives. She previously served as operations director at the People's Action, where she managed cross-departmental workflow, supported national organizing efforts, and streamlined compliance and contract administration. Beyond her organization work, Kay is a dedicated community advocate and serves on the board of how you say that, Kay?
Jalo,
Jalo.
is she from Sierra Leone? Jalo?
Jalo Upright Services and the Interactive Resource Center further her commitment to social impact and economic justice. Kay has been recognized for her leadership and contribution to social justice, including receiving the Keepers of the Flame Award from the International Civil Rights Museum. Her work centers on building power in marginalized communities, bridging the gap between activism and policy, and developing the next generation of public leaders. And I present to you Kay Brown and Dr. Jovita Lee.
Excellent. Kay, you got an excellent bio. Girl, okay. I love that for you.
You know, Aggie's got to keep
Okay, I was going to celebrate you until you said that. Thank you so much. It's Eagle Pride. But again, welcome and good afternoon, I believe, or almost afternoon. Definitely good to be here with all of you. I just, super honored that Miss Betty asked me and Kay to come have this conversation with y'all. And I really want it to be a conversation. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of engage one another through the duration of the discussion. So the way that we kind of approach this specific set of legislation is we were trying to focus, kind of grouping bills together. So these are going to be a little bit more democracy focused. The way that we work with the Alliance is and Advance is, we group it by issue area. And so we track legislation by issue area. And so today is going to be a little bit more democracy focused. And then I would love to come back and have further conversation around the other issue areas that we have as well. And so it's not an exhaustive list, just wanted to kind of preface with that. Excuse me. So we're going to start with some DEI legislation that has presented itself in the state. Two specific ones are what we're going to focus on. This first one being HB 171, and then the second being SB 227. So the first one I know folks have been hearing all about, and I believe we had a member of y'all's group on our town hall on Wednesday, Ms. Vanessa Smith, who did an excellent job talking about both HB 171 and 227. So I don't know if she's in the room, but if she did an excellent job on Wednesday, so just want to shout her out. And so HB 171 is the first one that came out, right? And so this one was the one around equality in state agencies and prohibition on DEI. And so the bill declares that state agencies will not promote, support, fund, implement, or maintain workplace DEI programs, DEI policies, or initiatives. And I need to check myself also, because one of the things that we're doing as pushback is saying DEI like as the whole term, so diversity, equity, and inclusion. We try to commit to saying what it is, because we believe that DEI has become kind of a buzzword in politics and not really what it's not being used for what it actually is. It's just kind of like a trigger word for a certain subset of folks across politics. And so using diversity, equity, and inclusion in hiring and employment and maintaining staff positions or offices dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion, or offering or requiring diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And so this one is related to state agencies, state government as well. And then this one was actually referred to the Judiciary 1 Committee for the 24th, but it was removed. And it was very soon after. I don't know if folks were engaged or saw the press conference that the Legislative Black Caucus did around HB 171 soon after it came out. And between that and then following that press conference, myself and Kay and our respective teams were able to come together and lobby some of the bill sponsors to really ask questions around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, one of the things that we noticed is that they don't really have a sound definition of what they mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, we can assume and know what they mean, but we're trying to challenge the legislators that drafted this bill. What type of details can you give us around what you mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion? How are we going to be able to combat some of the, yes, sir? Combat some of the legislative impacts this bill could have? Thinking about what will hiring look like now, or what will the workforce look like now in order to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, which really benefit, as President said earlier, white women first and foremost. So this kind of language or narrative that we're hearing that, essentially they're using DEI to be synonymous with Black is inaccurate. Because we are not the primary beneficiaries of diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. And so I kind of want to stop there to see, Kay, if you want to add any additional narrative around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also just kind of that experience, especially that day in the building where we joined together.
Yes, well, I will say, when people, when other folks say, well, if Black folks could just stick together, I'm going to tell you, in this moment, I have seen some of the most connectedness early on that I have, that previously maybe we didn't see the same way. So while other communities may be in chaos, I do want to say, looking at some of the landscapes and things across the state, many of us are more unified or waiting to activate than what we realized. So Wesley, I heard you mention that you wrote a letter, and that was the thing that got other people started. In this moment, that is what our people need and need to see. I will also mention that for some of our electeds in the state legislature and for some of our people in community that work for our state government, this could mean a display of your own history and origins could get you fired or could get you removed from office. So I'm not a partisan individual. I organize Black, y'all. I think I've been in there to say that many a times. But right now with the precinct organization, in a lot of areas, if somebody is removed from office, who replaces them? The people get together from the precincts and make those decisions. So I want y'all to be mindful and aware that racism is not just going to be about, the party that's pushing this right now. It can also mean that if this happens, we're going to experience racism from another level, and who gets replaced by who, based on what precincts may be organized. So if we have not thought about that, I want y'all to think about what that means, like locally. I also want to mention, because we don't always talk about this in our community, but class. It's known that oftentimes the higher you go in income and education, the more susceptible you are to certain things of racism, right? Because you're in spaces where you may be one of the only Black people or the first Black person or, along those lines. If this hits, the impacts to middle-class Black communities, I think, are going to be felt probably first. And I know that that's something that maybe we haven't talked about logistically on the ground as a larger, broader community, but I want y'all to understand why this was an urgent thing for our Black caucus to come together early in the year and take some kind of action. If we did not take any kind of action, then y'all, this could have been moved through. If people did not have folks knocking at their doors, asking questions at the Senate legislature, following up, asking them about when their town halls are, if we were silent, they would have taken that as consent that we were not paying attention. If you notice, I said the Black caucus got together. We didn't have a lot of other communities outside of that caucus did not have a lot of multiracial communities coming together specifically around this. But even though this is going to impact more than just our community, I do want y'all to know that they are looking to make this an attack on Black and the ability to not even speak about, exist, or celebrate your culture. The definition even of what diversity, equity, and inclusion is in this bill isn't even clearly defined enough that we can even fully grasp what they mean and what they intend to do with it. So I'll just stop there, Jovita, but I want to talk about, like, locally, there are going to be some pretty hard impacts for your state workers, for your governmental employees, and also for your Black elected officials. And in this moment, your state legislature, your Black elected officials are really going to need support and advocacy.
Absolutely. And I mean, plus one to everything that Kay said, and just, I think that part around just the impact, the lasting impact that just, not just this bill, like not just HB 171, but like this collective attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, I don't see a viable path for recovery if all of this were to come into play. I just simply don't. And so I'm glad that you lifted that, Kay, because we do have to think about, household impact, local impact. What does it mean for how we make decisions coming out of state agencies? What type of data analysis are they going to do if diversity, equity, inclusion, some of the required trainings and offerings are eliminated? Then what does that mean? How do we kind of keep implicit bias at bay? Like what does all of it mean? And to your point, it's very vague. And so we don't have solid answers from the bill sponsors around exactly what the aftermath will look like. And so again, this bill is stalled. We thought it was going to come back up. It still hasn't. I actually talked to Representative Austin this morning, and they are still in the building waiting for it to get recalendared or not. But regardless, we're still having conversations around this, and we'll get toward the end. We'll start to name some of the things that we have as far as like calls to action and just some of the things that we've already done around HB 171 and just some of the other bills as well. And so we will share that with y'all just so you can kind of know, what we're up to in regards to it. And just to answer, I think I saw a question flash. I might have been tripping, but it's for HB 171 is Representative Lowry is one of the primary sponsors. Representative Edens is one of the primary sponsors. I know that they also got, what's his name, Brian Echeverria, I might be mispronouncing his last name, on the bill as well, which we thought was very interesting because he is Afro-Latine. And so we were starting to see, as we kind of debriefed with the Black Caucus, we kind of had a conversation around tokenism. And so we kind of named him out loud as kind of how they're utilizing him as kind of the approval or the argument to be like, well, this can't be a discriminatory or a racist bill because we have a Black or Afro-Latin, person on the bill. And so that was another sponsor of the bill as well. And so that was a conversation we also had. Thank you, Kay. That was also part of the conversation we had with the Black Caucus around this bill. Another bill that's very related that came after, it was filed on the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, was Senate Bill 227. This is another diversity, equity, and inclusion bill that was filed. And so this is eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion in public schools. Excuse me, y'all. And so with this one, this bill would prohibit engagement or advocacy for discriminatory practices. And so that's how they're labeling diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts or departments or roles. In this particular bill, they are utilizing the phrase either discriminatory practices or divisive concepts. So if you're trying to figure out, that's the language that they're specifically using for this one. So they were a little bit more definitive in what they meant in 227. Prevention of affirming belief in divisive concepts, maintaining an office or a unit promoting discriminatory practices or offices or units that are named diversity, equity, inclusion. So I know a lot of folks saw how several universities were walking it back immediately. And that was a result partially because I know some of y'all probably remember the decision that was made summer 24 from the Board of Governors, the USC Board of Governors, for universities in that system to start to walk their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts back. And then other universities and other educational institutions had followed suit, even if they weren't in that particular system. You can start to see some of the colleges and universities start to rename their offices. So it may not be diversity, equity, and inclusion. It may be the Office of Cultural Practice, or just something that they've kind of created to avoid utilizing the actual term diversity, equity, and inclusion. Prohibit the State Board of Education from approving, providing, recommending, or requiring professional development that includes or advocated for divisive concepts. So again, some of that implicit bias training and other trainings. We actually had a conversation with the president of the NCAE, I want to say last week, around this specific legislation. It's actually an episode of our podcast, Advance Notice, and she kind of spoke to her fears and concerns around, if this bill were to move forward, what does that mean for educators? Like, what type of educators will we have? What does it mean when we think about student experience, and if they have an educator that is no longer required, or educators that may have been interested naturally in getting some of this training, but obviously won't be able to moving forward, what does that mean for student experience? And so she spoke a lot about her concerns around that aspect of the bill as well, because she's just worried about what does it look like in the classroom. And I know Ms. Vanessa Smith, who was on our town hall this past Wednesday, she spoke to both, like I said, 171 and this bill, 227, and she was talking about, okay, so as an educator, what will it mean when I'm standing in the classroom and a student may have a question of me that could fall under this category of divisive concepts or discriminatory practices? How do I answer the question? Because she was making the point that students are curious. They have questions. They want to know things. They're growing. They're learning. So, of course, they're trying to inquire about everything. And so for her, she was really making a very valid point around, as an educator who wants to engage their students and wants to give them the answers to the questions, am I prohibited from doing so? And, and so that was kind of the conversation that we had around this legislation as well. And I'll pause there, Kay, if you want to jump in for anything. And then this has been referred to Senate rules, so that's where it stands currently. Kay, if you want to.
Yeah, I want us to think about, y'all, in doing grassroots work in organizations such as this. One of the first things we usually do when we're trying to fight against a systematic thing is pull data. Can you imagine that because of this, you're no longer allowed to even keep certain data that you would need to be able to prove, have court cases, make recommendations, etc. And in some of our schools, imagine what the impact of that is going to be. Not just on students while they're in school, but their ability to comprehend the racism and world around them out of school. Some of the things that folks on the ground have been talking about in other areas around the state is if something like this does happen, and also keep in mind that Trump also has a set of things that he's doing around education, and it is very likely that a massive amount of defunding is going to happen before they wipe away anything. And some of our districts, especially Title I schools, that are reliant on federal funding and do not have the tax base to make up that money locally and cannot get it from the state legislature, we're going to have schools that are in a high level of disarray. And you know that they're going to be targeting, especially our schools and populations and demographics first. Some people have been talking about what the freedom schools look like. What does partnership with our HBCUs and other organizations look like? What does it look like to activate retired educators and teachers to come and help us fight back on these pieces? Y'all, I will say that when rapid response happens, because some of these bills are going to require a high level of rapid response from us, to just be ready. Because this isn't just going to impact our kids today. This is going to impact them as adults later, and their ability to fight back on what we know. This is one of the first rounds for this year. There's going to be more coming. So we're going to do all we can to not lose the fight on this. But just know that locally, this could mean a massive amounts potential targeting and defunding of public education in a way that we have not seen in our lifetimes. And I'll just pause and stop there. I know that some folks during the election cycle were like, okay, we're talking about Project 2025. This feels like you're trying to scare us. I had to tell people it is actually scary. This is an erosion of our public infrastructure. And I will tell you that out of all the politicians, there is one that I trust that's going to do what he say, no matter what. And now I'm seeing two, Berger and Trump. So if they say it, we cannot say that, well, they ain't going to be allowed to do that. They're not going to do that. We're going to appeal to the humanity in them. Y'all, those appeals are not going to work. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're going in with a level of precision to specifically erode infrastructure that we know it may be targeting us. We know it may be targeting our Latinx community, right? We know it may be targeting our Asian communities, but they are willing to sacrifice white folks to make this happen. That is how serious this is, and this is about to be. And I'm talking about, you can notice impacts this year. And a combination of there in some states, right? So let's say even New York or something like that, and your legislature is set up different, something happening nationally, maybe you can come up with the funds statewide so that the impacts are not as bad. We are not going to have that. We are not going to have that here. And that is what this bill is showing us. We're not going to have that safety net. So, as we fight, we also need to be prepared.
Absolutely. And thank you for lifting up kind of the point of like, we need to create our safety net, because that's the conversations that we're having. I know that we have been asked more than one time, I know myself, I know Kay, around what does it look like to have freedom schools again? What does it look like to have our own infrastructure again? And those are serious questions and conversations. They're not just in theory or let's just riff about it because we're bored. Like, those are serious questions and conversations that parents, families, community advocates are having, because we really do need to start thinking about what does our own infrastructure look like, because what we're witnessing around us is crumbling. And so we just have to come to terms with that fact, and start to name out and think about what are some things that we can put in place to make sure our children, our families, our folks are protected. And so those are a lot of the conversations that we're having on the ground and amongst each other, even internally, as our organization. And to give, sorry, y'all, I got hiccups bad. To give context, Berger, as Kay said, surprise, surprise, Berger is the primary sponsor of this bill. And so along with his friends, Senator Lee and Senator Overcash. And so I know Kay's dropping the full list of sponsors. I appreciate her doing that in the chat so folks can track along. But yes, this is Berger's bill, SB 227. Another one I wanted to highlight is SB 58, and it has a House partner, HB 72. This is the one that is restricting the Attorney General from challenging the president's EOs. As folks probably know, we were one of the 20-something states that were going against the current administration, that's how I say it, the current administration's executive orders. And so after that, we saw this bill pop up around prohibiting the Attorney General's powers from challenging the president's EO, which is quite interesting, knowing that the role of the Attorney General is to litigate and stand on behalf of the state. So this would prohibit him from doing his job description, to be quite honest. So it's quite interesting. The timing was quite interesting, obviously, because again, after that kind of joint effort amongst different states, we saw this come up. And so this does include lawsuits. This does include amicus briefs and other things as well. The Senate version is calendared for the 11th. It passes second reading on the 5th, and then the House version is the one that has been stalled since February. So the House version is not moving, but the Senate one is. And that's why we're drawing more attention to SB 58 instead of HB 72, but we still wanted to name the partner bill because it does have a partner bill in the House. Kay, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything else about SB 58.
I think that was pretty straightforward erosion of democracy.
Yeah, this was a straightforward one. So. Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward one. It's just we don't want the Attorney General to do his job, essentially. And so I kind of want to move into our more democracy focused bills that folks have probably been seeing as well, and we will get to the SAFE Act in this list because I know a couple of folks were chatting about the SAFE Act earlier, and so I want to make sure that we talk about that. And before, I'm sorry, I missed the last one. So SB 58 is sponsored by Moffitt and Settle, and I never know how to say this one, but Haynick or however you pronounce it, I've never known. But Settle and Moffitt are the other two primary sponsors. And so HB 66, the reason why we're still taking interest in this one, so again, this one has also been stalled since February. I want to start there. So this has not seen any movement, and they file similar legislation to this every session. So this is absolutely not the first time that we have seen a version of trying to reduce early voting in the state of North Carolina, but this one would reduce early voting essentially to 6 days. Like the technical language is like from the third Thursday to the second Monday, but 6 days. It would be a 6-day period instead of a 17-day period for early voting. A lot of issues around that, some of which is, thinking about the working class and just thinking about folks in general. Trying to fit it in within 6 days could be difficult when we're thinking about folks that may work full-time jobs or work like weird shift hours or long shift hours. You're thinking about how long, the polls are open. They may miss the time block. A lot of folks rely on weekend voting to be able to cast their ballot. I know even for me, I wait pretty late in the early voting period to vote. And I know I was talking to Kay and other folks. We all wait pretty late in the early voting period to vote. We'll be quite honest. And so thinking about going from 17 days to 6 days is quite a jump. And then the only weekend opportunity would be that Saturday before Election Day from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. So what if you work a weekend job? And what if you don't get off the 5? Or like, what does that really mean for folks? And so one of the things that our organization is interested in regards to a potential result of this bill is the fact that, sorry y'all, it would eliminate Sunday voting. Now we've been sold into polls as long as I've been alive, and I'm probably sure before then. And so when we're thinking about our efforts that we normally do as Black communities to get folks to the ballot box, and when we're thinking about our souls to the polls, and normally we go to church together, there's a little community event afterwards, and we all march to the polls, that won't be a thing if this bill were to move at any point forward in the legislature. And so that's our interest in it. It's just kind of the historical aspect of like, okay, what does that mean for our communities to eliminate Sunday voting? And we've had this conversation before. So this is not a new conversation. So thinking about 2013, there was already a case that deemed the current election laws at that time unconstitutional because they were trying to eliminate Sunday voting. It was deemed unconstitutional because of racial discrimination, because we know that it's our communities that take advantage of that method of voting, or those activities rather, most often. And so it was already a conversation in 2013. Here we are in 2025, and they're still attempting the same thing, right? But we've already been here before, like I said. And so this bill, again, would reduce it to 6 days. And another note that I want to make is that in this past election, approximately 4 million out of the approximately 5 million that engaged in the election voted early. So we're also not talking about a method of voting that's not popular. We're not talking about something that's slight. We're talking about the majority of folks that participate in the election vote early. And so a reduction from 17 days to 6 days would definitely throw a wrench in folks' plans. And so this has been, again, stalled since February, but we're still keeping an eye on it because we know how the building works, and we know that the minute that we take our eye off of one and think that we're safe, then all of a sudden it's on its third reading. And so that's why we're still naming this as something to watch and pay attention to. Hey, did you want to add something to this one?
Yes, the goal of the frequency of all that we're seeing that's going on, that's happening, is to get us to a point where we are on communication overload, we are on bad stuff overload. I tell folks sometimes it feels like a whiz, where I'm like, Lord, don't give me no more bad news. But the point of that is to get us into a space where we are too paralyzed to be able to fight back. What I want y'all to think about with what Jovita just said is what would happen if we had a combination of these bills together. So if we know that limiting Sunday access, early voting access disproportionately impacts working class people, disabled people, Black people, right? If we had, House Bill 171, if an elected official that sat on the Board of Elections spoke on it, they could potentially be removed. If our state legislature, some of our state representatives, if they spoke on it, right, and the racial impacts of this, they could potentially be removed. We have some people who do registration, engagement, things like that with our students that are in high school, and talk to them about the impacts of this on their communities when they don't vote, access, etc. People could be removed, fired, etc. So I know that we're seeing this, and it's like, wow, right? It's bad by itself. But I also want y'all to think about what happens if we get the combination of these things together, and how it would limit us to even be able to have our leadership talk to us about the actual impacts to us as a people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kay, for pointing that out. I really appreciate you naming that, because that is the thing, like the compound effect of all of these bills, especially the democracy legislation, right? Like we have 171, which is the opposite. So we have 171, then we have 227 coupled together, right? And then we have HB 66, and then the rest of the legislation that we're about to go into, like 127 and others that are going to be coupled together. Like if you think about all of those going into effect at the same time, it is going to be difficult to come back from it. And I hate to say it like that, because I try to be as optimistic as I can, but I also want to be as honest as I can. That's going to be difficult, y'all, to come back to the compounding effects of this legislation if all of it were to go forward at the same time. So thank you, Kay, for lifting that point. That's a very valid point. Did you want to add anything else?
We could have potentially fewer rights than what we had before we enacted civil rights. Yeah. And I think that sometimes we think civil rights was as bad as it got in our modern times. We would be starting off worse off than what our folks were starting off then when they were fighting for civil rights.
Yeah. Yeah. That's real. That resonates. Thank you, Kay. And some of the sponsors of this bill are Rep. Gable, Tyson, Kidwell, and Scott, if you want to kind of look up some of the sponsors of the legislation. And speaking of 127, here we are. So HB 127. So this is an interesting bill because this would actually legitimately criminalize voter registration. And so it would criminalize people or groups' use of voter registration forms during a voter registration drive. Yes, you heard that right. So if you actually utilize an actual form during a voter registration drive, you will be criminalized for that. They now are pushing for voter registration drives to be, one, registered with the County Board of Elections, and two, you're supposed to use a sample voter registration form for informational purposes only. So you're having a voter registration drive with the intended purpose of registering voters, but really you're not, because all you can do is show them a sample of what it's going to look like when they go register themselves. Not helpful, not effective, and that's the point. And so this would literally impose a class 2 misdemeanor. So it is criminalizing it. If an individual or an organization uses actual voter registration forms at an organized, what they're calling an organizer's voter registration drive. And so this was in the election law committee, and it was referred to the state and local government committee. Then it got stricken, and then it's kind of been stalled since the end of February. But this is definitely something to watch, because when we think about this in conjunction with the SAVE Act that we're about to get to in a little bit, again, that goes back to the compounding effect point that Kay was mentioning earlier. And so this is what it sounds like. It will absolutely criminalize voter registration. Now, a lot of the rationale that we're hearing, to give that context as well, from like the bill sponsors and just like folks that are in somewhat support of this, is because of what I feel like is not having the full story of what happened in 2024. So a lot of people are pulling, I don't know if folks saw in 2024, the report around voter registration forms being found on the side of the road. And I believe ABC 11 broke that news, and a few other outlets broke that news. And that's part of their argument. Like, when when we're having conversations with them, that's what they bring up first. It's like, clearly, and they think that's an excuse to say, clearly, organizations, churches, other, entities that are doing voter registration don't know what they're doing. And so we need to take it out of their hands and have a cleaner process. And they're utilizing that specific instance as one of their primary examples for why they're even bringing forth legislation like this. I don't believe that's a valid argument. This is my statements. I don't believe that that's a valid argument when you think about the broad efforts that all of our organizations do collectively around registration, around voter engagement and education. I don't believe that it's logical to create a blanket rule for any and everybody and to criminalize voter registration based on one example they saw in the 2024 election that broke the news. Like, to me, that's not standing. That's not enough standing. That's just me as Joe. But Kay, I'll pass it to you. But I just wanted to name that part out loud, that is something they bring up in conversations. Like, well, they were left on the side of the road, so clearly y'all know what y'all doing, so we need to make a deal about it. But Kay, I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
I would say with this bill, I want us to notice a thing, right? They're taking away, but what are they putting back to increase voter access? We could have something like, the voter registration drives don't work, but we're going to do automatic registration. When everybody turns 18, they're going to be automatically registered to vote, right? They're not doing that. So what that tells us is if they talk about the tactics, door-to-door, voter registration drives, the things that we're doing, and I would say as Advanced Carolina, the things that we fund organizations like you all to do clearly is working, because it would not be attacking what is not working, right? But y'all, when I started, I'm gonna do a little bit, but when I started in movement work, doing things door to door and collecting voter registrations was one of the first things that I did as a young single mom who was actually working in corporate in the call center at the time. Could you imagine me trying to get a job back then, me trying to service community, and I have a misdemeanor on my record because I chose to help community and get 10 of my friends registered, right? Because it's not just targeting the organizations that do it. If I just wanted to do it and I'm registering my friends, right? I can get a misdemeanor for that. Think about access. How many people actually know where their board of elections is to even know to get the form, right? Think about in combination, right? If there is an issue with your registration and they've also minimized the time where you can register and vote during early voting, how are our people actually going to get access? And how are they going to have time to be able to troubleshoot? And how can we help them troubleshoot if something is wrong? Because y'all know that is a thing as organizers that we do during the election cycle. Some people may be registered and they're registered in the wrong spot, and they need help and support in knowing how to navigate that process. Can you imagine that being a misdemeanor? And you being a young adult with a family to feed, already knowing the odds are stacked against you, already knowing that they're targeting DEI. If you're in anywhere and you're black, white people are looking like you must be a DEI hire, right? Imagine what compounding this, again, is going to do for our folks. So I just want us to think about that also. We said we want to get young people involved. How many young people understand the political process and importance enough that they're willing to catch a misdemeanor for it? And I'll stop there. Thank you.
I think that's a valid point, and I think even for me, I see this also as a recidivism issue, because if we think about some of the organizations that lead a lot of voter registration efforts across the state, a lot of their programmatic design is engaging folks that may have been recently released or, may have a record, but they're trying to, assist folks getting back on their feet, and they're able to compensate, these individuals for doing voter registration, and they're able to have some money in their pocket, which is, we already know, being recently released is already a financial burden, but that's another conversation for another day. So to me, this also blows up recidivism, because if I'm somebody that's doing this on behalf of an organization, I have a record and I'm just trying to have some money in my pocket. I have a hard time having a sound job, but I know I can get paid $15, $20 an hour to do this, and then I tack on a class 2 misdemeanor. Well, that's that on that. And so for me, that's one of my main concerns around it as well. It's just like we're also opening a door to exacerbate that whole recidivism point as well. Kay, did you want to add to that too?
And closing off the pipeline for young voters who are more likely to vote in an issues-based way. Y'all, I remember many moons ago when I got registered, I never went down to the Board of Elections. I didn't go down to the Board of Elections until I started doing activism work. I got registered because somebody came into Guilford County Schools, sat down in my class, and registered all of us seniors. I got my registration updated when I went to go vote, and then it was the Obama election, right? I was so excited and all the stuff and voting changed. I was on the HBCU campus, y'all. It was magic. But it was an on-campus voter registration drive that helped me update my registration, right? So I want us to think about not just what it's going to do for people coming home, second chances, not just what it's going to do for adults who are moving, X, Y, and Z, but also that is where we get probably some of the biggest bang for our bucks and being able to reach out to students. Y'all can't see something I'm walked up, but I just want us to think about that. And I'm a person who has a kid in high school, so I'm like, can I not, as a person who do this movement work, am I not allowed to register like the young folks in my family? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a slippery slope because some of this is undefined. It doesn't just say organizations; it also mentions individuals.
Right, and that's a good point too, because I just had a voter registration form slapped in my face. Mine was like, "Come on, we about to finish your registration," which was fine. But it's like, imagine if like we're caught doing that, then what does that mean? Like now I have my aunt as a class 2 misdemeanor because she was just trying to make sure I had the proper paperwork to be able to engage because I was, about to be able to vote in that upcoming election.
For those of you who remember the 1964 Freedom Summers, they were down doing registration. Can you imagine off the top everybody getting a misdemeanor?
Right.
Off the top, everybody getting a misdemeanor. So that is going to be a new level of also police engagement and police in an area where typically we have been fighting to get the police out of certain things. So I just want us to think about, like, with this, all of those kids would have came back with misdemeanors.
Yeah. That's real. Thank you for that perspective, Kay. And some of the responses of this one is Echeverria, which you talked about earlier, that's also on the DEI bill, diversity, equity, inclusion bill, Blackwell, Warren, and what's his name? Loftus as well. So those are some of the sponsors as well. And I know, Kay, thank you again for dropping these sponsors in the chat and stuff, but just give y'all some context on who to look out for in regards, in regards to this bill. Now we're on the SAFE Act. I know we just had a whole conversation around the SAFE Act just a little bit ago, but I just wanted to still touch base on it. And so this is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility. That's the SAFE Act. This is a federal piece of legislation. And again, this is the conversation that a lot of folks, I know I myself was on that call with Ms. Betty, and a lot of folks in the room, probably on Zoom, were on the call with Congressman Don Davis around this particular legislation. So again, here we go with the coupling. And so it would introduce stringent voter registration requirements. And so it would require voters to present a birth certificate or a U.S. passport to prove their citizenship when registering or re-registering to vote in federal elections. So right now, it's a federal election thing, but as we see in the state of North Carolina, all they need is something to copy and paste. And so I do not believe that we won't have a state version here soon. And a lot of my colleagues and Kay and everybody, we also have agreed on that. Like, we absolutely believe that we will have a North Carolina SAFE Act version here soon, or some iteration of this. We kind of have its cousin in 127 already, but we think that they're going to try something that kind of cuts the middle in relation to the SAFE Act. And so we're still looking out for it, but just kind of want to say that out loud, that that's kind of what we're all thinking in the infrastructure, is that we can see something that's going to be state election impact. And so, again, that's why we said this could allow for North Carolina lawmakers to draft up something similar here. And so for us, a couple of reasons that we don't like this. It's because, one, it's a financial barrier. So we're actually, framing this as a modern day poll tax. That's the way we're framing it. That's the way I know other partners are framing it as well, because if you think about it, passports are $165 base. If you want to expedite it, if you need it fast because an election is coming up or whatever, that's over $200. And so that is a cost associated with being able to engage in an election. Same thing for a birth certificate. I know for a fact I don't have mine. I'm having to get a copy right now. And that's $60 for me to get that. And so again, a cost associated with being able to access the ballot box. So that's why we're framing it as a modern day poll tax, because having to spend $165 or $60 shouldn't be the case when folks are just trying to engage in an election. And so we can also, figure that this would disproportionately impact Black voters and other voters of color. And so again, the cost burden, but then also this will also upend voter registration drives. Again, going back to 127, here's the coupling. So we have the state version of 127. This can also help to render voter registration drives null and void. And it would prevent voter registration online or by mail, because you would have to show this proof of citizenship documentation in person. That's the other thing. You can't upload it. It has to be in person. So I'm thinking even back to this last election, I moved right before the election. So I had to update my registration before I could vote in this past election. I did that using the online DMV site. So imagine, I halfway, I'll be honest, completely transparent, I halfway forgot that I need to update it because I wasn't thinking move, hello, you need a new registration. But imagine if I didn't have that vehicle right quick to update it and be able to vote in last year's election. So this would render that null and void as well, because again, you have to show documentation in person. You have to bring that documentation in person. So a lot of folks are predicting a vote next week. Some folks were like, well, it could be pushed to the following. I'm going for next week. And I know that we actually, since this slide that was put together 2 days ago, we have been contacted, myself and Kay, around some additional engagement in partnership with Blueprint North Carolina. So I would really love for Kay to speak to some of the phone banking that we'll be doing on Monday as well, and just any other thoughts you have around saying that.
Yes, and I can send this to you, Miss Betty, so that you can disperse it out to everybody. But y'all, people take silence as consent. And right now we have our unfortunate elected folks that are testing things on all levels. So we're going to be working with Blueprint Infrastructure to engage in some phone banking around the SAVE Act. I think that there are organizations that are still accepting letters or encouraging people to write letters to their elected official about the SAVE Act. But this is also a multiracial effort. So I tell folks, remind the allies that this impacts them too. And that if they're trying to be in space solidarity or anything else, now is the time for them to start picking it up and showing proof. But I will.
Mr. Williams! I think he might be off mute. I'm sorry, sir.
Oh, excuse me.
You're okay. You're okay. So yes, thank you, Kay, for that. And this is, again, this is multiracial impact legislation. And I think one of the things, I didn't say anything when y'all were debriefing because I didn't want to interrupt y'all's group discussion because I didn't think it was my place. But I did want to say one thing about the call with Congressman Davis that was concerning for me, was just like the continuous reiteration of this non-citizen voting narrative. I think that was my thorn in my side because there's just not sound data to support that. And so I was just a little confused on that being such a broad reason for him to advocate his continued support for the SAFE Act. Like that was kind of throwing me for a loop. So again, I just want to say that out loud. Like I don't know. I just don't know. And I see your comment, Saeed. Yeah, I was a little taken aback by that, to be quite honest. For that to be kind of like one of the main pillars for him supporting this act, after knowing that like this kind of robust impact far outweighs even a false understanding of non-citizen voting. Even if that is your truth, it's not true, but even if that's your truth, still what you're seeing as the impacts like greatly outweigh that. So I think for me, I was just kind of like, interesting. So I just wanted to kind of name that too. Like, and so that's kind of what we're taking into the space on Monday when we're doing these patch through calls, and Kay just dropped the link to the patch through calls in the chat, and she's also going to send it to Miss Betty for anybody that wants to participate. But I know that's some of the energy internally that we're taking to those conversations as well, because we were quite, I don't know, it was just a little unsettling for that point. We brought up time, but time it was like every 10 minutes. That was the point he was making. And I see the comment, he is not like us. He sounded like Tim Scott and Brian Donalds. Yeah, it was unsettling. I don't want to harp on it too much, but to me it was unsettling, because I was like, there's not real data to support what you're saying. So, but that's the truth from what I gathered from the conversation. And again, Kate will send out the patch through link via email, well, to Ms. Betty for via email, and then it's in the chat if folks want to capture it too. So here are some of the things we'll end here, and I'm so sorry if I went over time. I wasn't quite sure. I know you got some unfinished business to do, so apologies for that. But Advanced Carolina and North Carolina Black Alliance has done the following in response to the legislation we just walked through. So we have ran social media campaigns around these various bills on both our Black Alliance side and our Advanced Carolina side. We posted our HB 171 person with Legislative Black Caucus. We produced an advance notice episode just here recently, was dropped Thursday on SB 227. We've created several CTAs or call to actions in response to the various bills, including our live one right now on HB 171. It's on our Advanced Carolina site, advancedcarolina.org. We created and released organizational statements, media blasts. Will actually be, while the organizing team is leading our phone banking effort in conjunction with Blueprint, we'll also be at a media event on behalf of the Black Alliance in relation to the SAVE Act as well that Congresswoman Ross is leading on Monday. So we'll be having a two-pronged approach response to the SAVE Act on Monday. We've been responding to it, but like that's our most upcoming thing that we're about to do is the phone banking and that media event. Our policy team and our organizing team have been working in lockstep excellently. I just want to shout out Kay, like excellently over these past several weeks around these bills. And so we've been able to have the local education. We've been able to get this information out into the community in a real meaningful way. We've been able to engage our organizing team and our policy team together to do some of the in-building lobbying and conversations with the bill sponsors. We've been able to coordinate with the Black Caucus and the Progressive Caucus. I know folks may know about the more recent caucus that was founded by Renee Price and Maria Cervania and a couple others. So we were able to collaborate with them as well. Our Portfolios Advancing series, and so that our portfolio is advancing our communities on the Advanced Carolina side, and we have an advancing series under there. We do series based on our issue areas. So we have an education one, we have a environmental justice one, we have an access healthcare one, so on and so forth. And so we were able to do our town hall with Ms. Vanessa Smith and others, other elected leaders like Senator Candy Smith, Senator Murdoch, Senator Tedros, and then also community leader Kiana Dubashi. We all had that conversation on Wednesday around HB 171 and SB 227. I felt like that was a powerful conversation. Those, especially Ms. Vanessa, brought it home at the end, and I was like, well, we're done with this event because she really brought it home for us. Again, lobby the bill sponsors and then local engagement with constituents that the organizing team has been leading. And so we have been active in response around these bills, but we are one of one. Well, technically two, I was about to say one organization, but technically two organizations. And so we would love for folks to engage the things that we do have. So please, if you have social media, follow us at NC Black Alliance on Instagram, at Advanced Carolina on Instagram. We also have Facebook. So it's North Carolina Black Alliance for Facebook and Advanced Carolina for Facebook. And we are not on Twitter. We are on Blue Sky, which is kind of the new version of Twitter, and we have YouTube for our longer form podcast episodes. And so just, engage us on our different platforms. Go to our website, our CTA. It's right on the top banner for folks to engage. And we also just to mention, I know we didn't talk through it, but we do have our Count Don't Cancel campaign that's still running around the Riggs v. Griffin stuff that feels like it's going on forever and ever and ever. And so we do have that petition live on ncblackalliance.org/Count Don't Cancel that folks can engage as well. So this is what we've done in response to these bills. This is what I have in regards to information. Kay, I want to leave a moment for you. If you have anything to add around what we're doing, what we're going to do, and just any additional information, and then that'll be it for me, y'all. I'll give you what I got. So, Kay, I'll pass it to you.
So I will say, in addition to all of these and all of these things that we're doing, y'all, there is going to be a lot more that we are going to have to do as far as rapid response, as far as taking consistent action on certain pieces. I know we're already at the table with groups like Black Voters Matter, Blueprint, etc. So if there's any support that you all need as far as what action should we take, how do we chisel those things down locally, what are some of the things that we can do, please reach out to myself, Ms. Betty. We are more than happy to help, get things worked out. And we're going to be pushing out some things that we're hoping that you all can come and participate in. As far as rapid response, calling the legislature, going down to the legislature, engaging in community town halls and conversations. But a lot of things we're going to be looking to do, including like community block parties, so that we get people in on intersections of Black joy as well, right? Because while we wait for God to open the door, we're going to praise him in the hallway and still take moments of joy for ourselves. But in those, we're also going to be pushing out and giving folks information to help them understand what's going on around them. In order to fight back, it is going to take a massive, broad-based building effort with our people and community. And so we got to make sure that we're creating a space for new people to come in, get engaged, and stay engaged. So I thank y'all and appreciate y'all for always opening up the space for me to come through from all the way from Guilford County. Wasn't able to be with y'all in person today. But I will come in person later.
And that is it for me as well. And thank y'all for having me. And thank you, Ms. Betty, for asking me to come into this space today. And I look forward to continuing to engage this group moving forward and joining Kate on some of those in-person visits and getting to know folks and engaging y'all. So I truly do appreciate y'all allowing me to be in space with y'all today and talk with y'all. And anything I can help with, I will do my best to support.
Excuse me, can I ask a question or make a statement to clarify something? I'm from Gates County, by way of Greensboro too. What you were saying about the voter registration that people cannot do, has a bill passed that individuals cannot do voter registration?
No, ma'am, it has not passed. It's in the building, but it has not passed as of yet. So it's still, okay, my computer just froze, but it's still, hopefully you can still hear me, but no, it has not passed yet.
Okay.
We are just tracking it. It's 127 and it's been stalled since February 27th, if you need a date.
Bill, okay.
HB 127.
HB 127. Because we have a lady that does voter registration from our NACB.
Right.
Okay, so she can continue doing that until the bill decides something different.
That's correct. So the bill is not in effect, so it is not law.
Okay, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for asking the question. And Miss Betty, or I don't see the president still, but I'll pass it back to y'all.
He's here. Thank you so much. Dr.
You're welcome.
And Kay, that was wonderful. I see the interest in the room. I see the energy in the room to a call to action, to get in action. So thank you so very much for this presentation. I wanted to say too, I am the regional coordinator for Advanced Carolina for the Northeast. I also have in the room Janice Sharp. She is the county coordinator for Bertie, but we both cross different counties. So send us an email or just give me a call or Janice Sharp a call And we'll be right there to help you out with town hall, just a table, tea at the table, or whatever you may ask us to do. Thank you so much. I'll turn it over to the president.
Thank you. And Ms. Betty, is it helpful for me, and whoever, is it helpful for me to send my slides as well as the link to the calls on Monday? Is that helpful?
Yes, they're saying yes. If you send it to me, I'll send it out. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll get with you so we can send one email. Thank y'all again.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It was very informative. Are there any questions? I can't see the chat, so I don't know if there are any questions for you before we let you go.
They answered them all.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any other ones in the chat, but I did drop some things. I did drop some things in the chat for folks that were online if they needed it.
Okay.
I'll email that out. Excuse me. Oh, no, I didn't. We want to thank you, Advanced Carolina, for providing pizza for us today. I asked them, I said, what would y'all like to eat at our meeting? And I said, pizza or subs? They said, pizza. Well, the president here flexed his powers and said, I want hot pizza. So, Mr. President, did you get hot pizza?
I got hot pizza. We got hot pizza.
So we got hot pizza. Thank you,
I'm
Advance,
glad y'all found it. Thank y'all.
for your support in providing lunch and your support, period, because y'all do a lot for Eastern North Carolina. Anything else, Mr. President?
Okay. Thank you again. Thank you again so much. Unfinished business. I do just want to mention, though, don't forget that the 40-day boycott that's going on. I was trying to find the list of stores that we were asked to boycott from, but it is a 40-day, just like we're in the 40 days of Lent, that there is a 40-day boycott of stores that have rolled back their DEI policies. And when we stick together and they can see that it affects their financial position, it will get their attention. The scholarship banquet that we're going to do, the executive committee, I sent you all the email from Justice Earls. I was just so pleased that she accepted our invitation to be our main speaker for our scholarship banquet. And the date of our scholarship banquet is going to be August the 8th. It will be at Edgecombe Community College. And we're going to be offering several scholarships to minority students that will be going off to college. So I do have the applications here. So we ask all of you that are here to take these applications, take them to your high schools, your churches, wherever you see fit. And I do want to ask a special favor of Mr. Matthews. Now, I see that there's going to be a scholarship information session here in Martin County later. Is it this month? Okay, I'm going to request that you or you delegate someone with your authority to attend and give out our application there. So there are not many requirements for our application. Let me get that. So we're just asking the applicants to complete the application along with their academic transcript, a personal statement detailing a personal letter detailing your academic goals and community service involvement, and 3 recommendations, letters of recommendation, 2 from teachers or guidance counselors, and 1 community leader. So the deadline for these applications is going to be our May 10th. Now, we don't meet in May. but that would have been our regular meeting date. So we want these applications back by May 10th so that when these schools have their, what do they call it? Scholarship banquet, that we can go and make a presentation to them that they've received the scholarship from the Eastern North Carolina Civic Group, but the monies would be awarded at our August banquet when they give us a class schedule or something to show that they have enrolled. And doing it that way, we don't have to, the college doesn't have to know about it, because if we didn't do it that way, the college would subtract that from any monies they were getting. So we want to make sure we don't go through that. And Mr. Matthews is our scholarship chairman, and it has his address on the application. So today, before you leave, you all make sure you get some of these. It's 2 pages. My spouse recommended that I not staple them together. And if you all need some more, just shoot me an email and I will forward the applications to you. Now, again, this is for minority students. It is for us. And hopefully we're going to get good participation with that. Are there any questions about that?
I just want to say, when you say Edgecombe Community College, it will be the Tarboro campus. You know, they have one in Rocky Mount.
Oh,
You'll
okay.
get more information.
Okay. And the tickets for the banquet will be $25. And also, if you all know of any business that would want to help sponsor this, please get in touch with us, that we can get in touch with that business.
And our elected officials to be involved.
That goes without saying. Our elected officials should be involved and participate in this. Is there any new business? Are there any questions from our people online about this, anything we've mentioned? Okay, seeing none.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I just want to say this. On last Monday, when Trump did his State of the Union, I didn't listen to him, but I listened to Roland Martin with his State of Our Union. And I listened to it from 8 o'clock to the time it went off the air. And he had ministers, bishops, religious people, he had Congress people, he had young folks, he had elderly people that have been around for a while. And some people think that he's a little too radical. But my point is, what he was saying and doing last evening, it kind of hit home, because some of the things that were said is some of the things that we should be doing now. Because we need to be more proactive than reactive. We sitting back letting all these here things that Trump is pushing toward, mandates, and saying we can't do this, we can't have that, and we sitting back accepting it. But we need to do some pushback on it. But one thing that really caught my attention was someone said that whatever we do, we need to do it incognito. It like we always said that at night when we sleeping, they are working. We need to reverse that road. We need to work while they sleep. And the main point is, just like we out here doing these Zoom calls. Now, Roland Martin had over 250,000 people on that Zoom call. But see, that's 250,000 people that Trump administration is gonna go back and count them numbers. They don't know who everybody is, but they gonna say they done had 250,000 people. Then why the rest of them at? They're gonna do but make them want to go in and make some more mandates, change some more laws. So what we need to do things, especially on the local level, unbeknown to the enemy. I'm gonna put it like that. We just got to have these meetings and not so much a Zoom and getting 100 and 200 people together. But we just need to start planning how we gonna do our own pushback. And I think the ladies mentioned something about our own infrastructure. We need to start possibly looking at that. Because there was a time when we had our own infrastructure and we were a lot better off than what we are today. Thank you. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And he had Reverend Barber, who gave the State of our Union address. And I text some of my fraternity brothers as Reverend Barber was speaking that he grew up in Roper, and I'm from Roper, and a few years older than Reverend Barber. Reverend Barber used to want to hang around us older guys, and we wouldn't let him. So I told him, I said, maybe we should have let him, and some of that would have rubbed off on us. And maybe it's a good thing he didn't hang around us. You might not be a preacher. Is there any new business to come before us?
Well, not a new business, but on that note, maybe we need to get him to call in too one day. I'm happy to been a part of getting him elected back in 2005 as our state president up in Greensboro. That was a fight. I served as the publicity chair for the NAACP back in 2005 for the state. But the other thing I want to say, the Medicaid vote that took place in Washington the other week, people need to understand that's not been put to vote. It's not law yet. That came up the other night. But it shows you what it would look like if it does go into law. So it's not law yet, but that's what they voted on. And I want to say Facebook. After 30 days, your Facebook Live will be gone away. Most of the time, what I do anyway, like today, when I go home tonight, I will put it on YouTube so I won't have that problem. Your Facebook Live, it seems like everything we come up doing to educate our people, that they find a way to try to block us. But you can go to YouTube, but everybody ain't on YouTube, so now we have to make sure we get people to sign up for YouTube. But I did have 86 people online today on my Facebook page and other pages. I just want to add that. I don't know how many we got on the Zoom, but I know I got 86 on my page for now. And it normally end up about 200 people be looked at it, but for people go back and look at it. So I will be putting on YouTube tonight when I get back from the other event. That's all I have.
And I see a hand up online from our friend Lamisha Whittington.
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Hey, Smith, Civic Group. Thank you, President Stokes. I'm actually calling Simpson here. I'm not sure can and can't see. Hey, y'all. So I wanted to hop in really briefly, and I know our last conversation, Brother Dancy and others asked me to provide just an update, and I think today's very robust information from Dr. Lee and Director Brown are extremely pertinent and extremely urgent. So I want to make sure I'll circle back with you all during the next meeting to provide additional information, what's happening on the federal level, and give a bit more of an extensive overview and breakdown and what's coming up, call to action. But I want what today's message, I want it to resonate, and I need you all, I'm very proud of what was taken on in this work. I'm very proud to see the work continue by Director Brown and Dr. Lee. Very urgent. What I will say is I will be sharing a letter for you all to actually share with your networks, including your congressional members, specifically Congressman Don Davis. There was a very prolific statement that was made at the beginning of this conversation today, and it was the exposure of DEI and who it has benefited, and also who has been at the less receiving end, and that being specifically Black women. And why do I say that? I'm not sure if folks were aware, but this week, my mother, myself, my brother, and our organization have been targeted by right-wing media outlets all the way up to Fox News. We have now been a recipient of harassment. Our faces and names and identification information has been posted online. And we are embroiled now in pushing back against very false, salacious attacks from these false news outlets. And it's simply because they are angry that a Black organization and a Black woman-led organization was about its business enough to be awarded $20 million from the EPA to tackle water quality. And as you all know, because of President Stokes and because of the late Mr. Sears, we came to you all in Williamston and led a workshop and did water quality and education and did water quality tests. Well, there was another county that we did that for first before we got to you all, and they followed the process all the way through, from testing to advocacy to press conferences. President Stokes even joined some of those folks and gave word last year. But a county, Brunswick County, we were able to help them go all the way through to identifying 500 households that we could actually replace their pipes ourselves and hire local construction and plumbing companies. And the EPA said yes. It took us a year. It was hell and high water. Everyone stood against us. And when I tell you no one was in our corner but God and you all, I am not exaggerating. And that was both liberal and conservative that did not want to see Black women and Black leadership, because we have men on the board and men in our director leadership. They did not want to see us go over the finish line to get our first federal government, and definitely not 20 million. And so what we've seen is they can't stop us from getting the money because it's contractually obligated. So that's not the stop. The stop is they are targeting us and other organizations led by Black women. We are one of three that are being targeted in all 50 states with campaigns to put a smear campaign and to send hate trains to us. And so what we are asking, as we are talking about policy that is moving, it is very humbling, and it has been a time for deep prayer and session with my elders and with God, and to realize that everyone else that we have protected, we are now asking for that same support as we are being made an example of what it means to stand up in your own liberation and your own autonomy. This is what they're trying to do with the policies, is to beat us down, but this is not slavery, and we are not going back pre-1865. Right. God is my master. And so we will send you all a letter that we've already sent to the federal government, to the US EPA specifically, to ask them to stand 10 toes down in supporting the fact that we are already an awardee, and to disparage and stay away from false media reports and harassment and targeting that is happening. And I would ask that you all, in support of us and what we have done and continue to do, just share that letter and just be in support of us in solidarity. But I appreciate the time. I'll see you all the next meeting, and we'll come prepared for any, updates policy federally that is coming down to impact all the state level agencies. And what you're seeing that North Carolina Black Alliance and Advanced Carolina both presented today, Democracy, Green, and Green Majority is engaging on the federal level, and that is where our policies, where we are engaging advocacy that trickles out to the state level. So I'll be prepared next month to add to the conversation, but I appreciate the time, President Stokes.
Thank you so much for that report, and we support you. You've got our backing, truly.
Mr. President, I just want to add too, you can go to my YouTube page and see that presentation, the work that they did, and I'll tell them to put the link out.
Thank you.
And I have it on DVD too, anybody want to get it.
Okay, as we come to the close of our meeting today, I just want to say, Dancer, you dropped a dime on us today when you told us how Congressman Butterfield was elected and who wanted
Appointed. He was
appointed. And I didn't know that our
You know when Frank
present
Ballard went out.
congressman wanted that position.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Frank had to go out, and we had to appoint someone.
Yeah, yeah. So that was news. You remember? Wow, I didn't know that. Wow. So that's just been a lifelong goal of his. Yeah. Come on up here, Miss Smith.
Good morning, Eastern North Carolina, and of those surrounding the eastern parts of our counties and state. It is a pleasure to have been in your presence this morning and to know that you all are active and involved. I would just like to leave a short little message with all of you. And this message is for us as a people, as we go forward and we take on all the issues that are coming before us, with all the voting bills and all the changes in policy. I want us to remain focused. Keep in mind that we survived the heat of the cotton fields, and we survived the elevated cost of farming. We survived being poor to the point that they gave us food stamps, and then we still learned that in the midst of food stamps, we had to learn to share continuously. We were allowed to educate ourselves, and then they discovered that we were inventors and we had great inventions. So then they decided, okay, let's eliminate their minds and cut back some of the education that we are affording them. So don't forget your strength in the midst of everything that we're having to be put forward in doing. Also, I would like to say, not just from my house and your house and our community and this community, but from every angle and aspect of North Carolina, let us be prepared for the unexpected and let us be ready to do the unexpected. And that is to stay focused, love one another in spite of what comes against us. And by all means, if they take away our vote, let us put a quilt in our mind that will sew us together so we will not ravel apart. And be also ready to fight when you have to fight. Sometimes it will mean sometimes you're by yourself, you're alone, no one will stand beside you, but God is always there. So keep your focus and never let your dreams go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Thank you so much.
We want to thank everyone for participating in our meeting today, and we'd like to close out with a prayer. Father God, thank you for giving us another day. Lord, bless us so that we will use this day to help make a better life for all humanity. Lord, we thank you for your blessing. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for your mercy. But above all, we thank you for your Son, Jesus. We offer this prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen. And we'll see you all next time.